Hey guys, Hoang here, and today we're talking about things to know when visiting the south rim of the Grand Canyon. So in this video, we're going to go over tips on how to make your trip as memorable as possible. First off, in order to get to the Grand Canyon, you'll probably have to fly in there, and you have one of 3 airports as an option to arrive. So the first airport is the Flagstaff Airport, which is about 90 minutes away from the canyon. It is the smallest of the airport options and probably the least convenient to get to, being so small. The other 2 options are major airports, one in Phoenix and one in Las Vegas. Both are roughly about 4 hours away from the canyon itself. So the next thing is, where do you stay when you're in the Grand Canyon? Well, you mainly have 2 options. One is staying inside of the park itself, and then one is staying right on the outside of the park. I would highly recommend staying inside of the park in order to maximize your time there, as opposed to staying outside, unless all of the hotels and lodges inside of the park are booked. If you stay outside of the park, you're going to have to spend a lot of your morning and evening driving to and from the park, so that's going to take up a lot of time. Staying inside the park is definitely going to be the best option to maximize the time you have to view the canyon itself. So most of the lodges are fairly close to the rim itself, so that you can walk to it within a reasonable amount of time. The only exception, I believe, is the Yavapai Lodge, which is farther out from the rim, and basically you'll either need to drive or take a bus to get to the rim from that lodge. You'll want to book early, because when I booked 5 months in advance, and the only lodge left was the Yavapai Lodge, and there were only very few limited rooms when I tried to go in September. I had to stay at the Yavapai Lodge, even though it's farther than the rim than I would have wanted. So next on that topic is using buses to get around. If you're stuck at the Yavapai Lodge or at any one of the other lodges, there's a very massive bus system to get you all throughout the park, so that you really essentially don't have to drive. There are 3 major bus routes or lines that you'll end up taking throughout the park to get around. The first being the blue line, and that one is the one that's going to take you between the visitor center and all of the lodges. So if you're at the Yavapai Lodge or any of the other lodges and you want to get around to the major centers or things like that, then you'll be taking the blue line. It's also the connection between the other 2 lines, the first being the red, the second one being the orange. The orange line takes you between all of the eastern overlooks in the park, and then the red line takes you between all of the western overlooks in the park. Something to note is the western overlooks, I think, are generally a bit nicer than the eastern overlooks. Those are the ones on the red line. One thing to note though is that you cannot drive to any of these overlooks. You have to take the bus, so you have to take the red line to get through them. The orange overlooks, however, on the eastern side, most of those overlooks have parking and you can actually drive to. So if you want to see all of the overlooks in the minimal amount of time, you'll probably need 2 nights in the canyon itself. When I did my trip in 2019, we arrived there in the afternoon from Sedona, and basically we did all of the overlooks in the middle and along the blue route near the visitor center the first day. And then the second day, which we had a full day, we did the orange line routes in the morning and drove around so that we could go at our own pace. And then in the evening, we did the red line routes. And that we had to take a bus for, and we also stayed out along the red line at one of the overlooks for sunset. So that goes into the next tip of the best time to actually see the canyon and do sightseeing, especially for photos, is sunrise or sunset. During the middle of the day, the canyon is very, very bright, and it loses a lot of its colors just because the sun is so bright. If you're really trying to capture gorgeous pictures of the canyon itself, then definitely prioritize sunrise or sunset. Now, Hopi Point is one of the most popular locations for sunrise and sunset due to its 180-degree view of the canyon. However, it does get really crowded, and if you want to avoid the crowds to get photos, then I would suggest going to Powell Point, which is what I did to be able to capture sunset photos without having to deal with a lot of people. And I could see all of the crowds at Hopi Point from Powell Point because they're right next to each other. The Yavapai Geological Museum is also a phenomenal spot to see sunrise or sunset, and you could drive to it as opposed to having to take the bus, whereas the other 2 points you have to take the red line to get to. And that's something to note because those 2 other points do require taking the bus. The buses do stop, I believe, 30 minutes after sunset. And the bus drivers make sure that it's very clear and that you know when the last bus is going to run. They keep announcing it as you get closer to sunset the whole entire time, so you'll know when the last bus is going to run, but you definitely want to make sure that you catch one of those because you don't want to be stranded out there and have to walk all the way back. So the next tip is basically take the buses when you need to get around places efficiently. However, there is a trail that goes along the whole edge of the rim. That trail is called the Rim Trail and allows you to just be able to see not just the overlooks, but pretty much everything in between and really enjoy the canyon itself. Now, there are trails that go into the canyon if you want to do some hiking. However, a lot of those trails are very intense and should only be fully taken by experienced hikers. For example, the Bright Angel Trail goes down to the bottom and it's 6 miles each way. And the North Kaibab Trail goes into the canyon and it's 14 miles each way. So these are not trails that you would do easily in a day. These are trails that experienced hikers would go do, and usually involves camping and staying overnight. Another thing to do while you're out the Grand Canyon is go and see the stars. You're out basically in the middle of this large area that basically has no light pollution, which is phenomenal for being able to actually see the stars. A spot that I would recommend if you want to go stargazing is the Yavapai Geological Museum, because you can actually drive there, and while the museum is closed at night, you can walk around all the areas outside of it. It's very accessible from the parking lot, and you can see just into the canyon. You can see all the stars above, and it's absolutely magnificent. And there's lots of guardrails around the area too to keep you safe since you're walking at night. However, just make sure you use lighting or anything, flashlights, to be able to get around safely. And the last thing I want to talk about, and the thing that will probably waste the most amount of your time if you don't do it properly, is eating meals. There are several dining areas at all of the lodges throughout the park, and most people flood these during lunch and dinner, so it's very common that you'll have to wait at least 30-40 minutes just to order food, not even eat yet, because they're so packed and all of the tourists are flooding in to get food. So what I would advise is, if you're trying to maximize your time, then eat during off hours or bring your own food. So especially if you're trying to do sunset, for example, I would advise you try to eat maybe at like 3 or 4 p.m. and then make your way out to the canyon so that you can watch it during sunset, not be hungry, and not have to worry about just all of the people that flood in, because a lot of the people don't stay out for sunset. They come back, and during between 5 to 7 p.m. the food areas are just absolutely packed. So that is going to take up a lot of your time if you plan wrong, because you're going to have to get food and you're going to have to wait through all of those lines. So definitely try to eat off hours or bring your own food so that you can go out to locations and have food with you, so you don't have to go back and wait through all of those lines, because it takes up a lot of time. Ultimately, the goal is to be able to just enjoy the canyon in all of its glory, and you really just want to spend as much time as you can going around. Again, take the Rim Trail to go and really just see the canyon instead of just the overlooks, but then just spend as much time as you can out there. Don't stay inside or just hang out in the lodges, but go out and actually explore and see the beautiful canyon that's out there. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments or tips on visiting the Grand Canyon, feel free to leave those in the comment section down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.